Hold on. You're telling me inflammable means flammable? That explains a lot. What if I told you you could eat perfectly smoked beef brisket in just 3 hours? That would sort of be a lie. Well, maybe more of a half-truth. Today I want to show you how you could prep your beef brisket ahead of time, where you could have it readily available, super easily, with no babysitting your smoker. This looks so appetizing. It's a big boy. Oh yeah! You don't need to babysit the sous vide. Hot. This looks so not appetizing. Woo! This is dangerous. Ooh, it's hot. Look at that jiggle. Barbecue smoked beef brisket. Now for a few select true smoker barbecuers types out there, they are going to hate this video. But as an amateur food liker guy, I don't have time to babysit the smoker for the 18 hours, 24 hours, or who knows when it's going to be done cooking. And on top of that, do I even have the skills to smoke the meat for that long without it drying out? Probably not. I don't think you could do it either. Or you might. I don't know. But I have found a way to make perfectly juicy brisket ahead of time, where all you need is a few hours of smoking and you're ready to go. But it does require a special tool that makes life in barbecuing all that much easier. An immersion circulator, or a sous vide tool thing. Now the process is simple. We'll prep our brisket, sous vide it for about 24 hours to 36 hours. You go at your own pace. Slap it in the fridge until we're ready to eat and smoke it for 3 hours. Essentially, you're reheating it with smoke. And I know that sounds wrong, but trust me on this. And then you eat it. No more guesswork when it's gonna be done. No babysitting your smoker. Bing, bang, boom. Super easy and perfect every single time. So first, to prep our brisket, I have about 10 pounds of a brisket point, which is side of the brisket that is fattier, a little bit more flavorful. If you want more of a lean cut, look for the flat. Or if you're a real man who can smoke a 30-pound Packer brisket, you do you. Toxic masculinity. So let's get this out of the bag and see what we're working with. This looks so appetizing. So first things first, we are gonna need to dry this off. Just using a paper towel. Let's get off any of this excess liquid off of here. Oh yeah, it's a big boy. Should have used 2 hands. So from here, depending on where you get your beef from, you may need to trim any excess fat. This one has been trimmed pretty well. There's not too much fat on this. There's not much to trim. We could see here, this section, there is quite a bit of excess fat. So you want to be able to trim off and leave about 1/4 of an inch of fat on top is ideal. Helps protect the meat. Obviously adds a little bit more flavor, but this piece has a lot of fat already inside of it. So we only want to keep just a little bit of fat on this. You can use this fat, render it down, and make some tallow. You can cook with the beef fat. Taste absolutely terrific. Now at this point, you're gonna have to make some calls on how big of a piece of meat you're gonna wanna work with. Now you're limited by a few things. First, your vacuum sealer. My vacuum sealer is this size, which that's a tight fit, and I think that is okay to work with. So I'm just gonna leave the length as it is. So I think I'm okay with that. The other limitation is how big your sous vide container is. Now you don't need a fancy sous vide container if you have a giant cooler. This is called a cooler. Lying around, this works fantastic. So this obviously is gonna fit, very nice. And then lastly, how big is your smoker? My smoking setup, which we'll get to later, is an 18-inch Weber kettle that I modified with a pot, whatever. 18 inches is how big I can go. This is, that is like exactly 18 inches. So with those 3 things in mind, you could obviously cut these up into smaller pieces if it works out better for you. And if you could live with how large this thing is, like I am going to make the best of it. But again, if you need to just slice off a section, you can use it for ground beef, or if you want to smoke them in smaller sections. Super easy to do. No worries. So next, to season this. So like all of our meats, our ratio of how much we want to salt, we're looking at 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt per pound of meat. This being 10 pounds of meat. That's right, 5 teaspoons of kosher salt. Good job, Dora. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna use all of this salt. And then now next we're gonna need our barbecue beef rub. Now what are we gonna use? There are some purists who will only use black pepper. Clearly, I'm not that guy. Now, of course, you could always buy a pre-made barbecue mix, but why would you when they're just a bunch of ingredients? And then you could shape it to however you like it. Just make sure if you are getting a dry rub that is pre-mixed, you wanna avoid any ones that already have salt in them, as you control your salt usage here to make sure you have the right amount of salt, the right amount of flavor. But I'm gonna make my own dry rub, and it's really simple. All right, so in a spice grinder, I'm gonna use 3 tablespoons of whole peppercorns. If you got just black, that's cool. If you got a mix of white and black peppercorns, that's cool. So that's what I got. I like to stock up. Lots of peppercorns. Next, we're gonna need a tablespoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of mustard powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of chipotle powder, then lastly, half a teaspoon of cayenne powder. Secured, give it a quick little whirl. Maybe a little bit more. Kind of want cracked black pepper. Not too fine, but not too coarse. Something like that. That looks good. Sure. So this is gonna make about half a cup of this beef dry rub. This thing works well for any sort of beef, any barbecue. Again, play with the flavors, the seasoning, however you like to do it. But first, I'm going to set aside 2 tablespoons because we are going to be making our own barbecue sauce with the drippings from this. So good. To finishing all of this off, just be super, super generous. You might use it all, you might not use it all. Honestly, it kind of doesn't matter. Just want it to coat it until it's all coated really well. Can you over season this? I mean, I guess. Will you? Probably not. Now, to be honest, because we are sous videing this, getting optimal coverage isn't a huge deal since it's gonna be cooking in its own juices anyways in the bag. But yeah, we're just gonna use this whole thing. Actually works out pretty well. Jam in that seasoning nice and deep as possible. Oh, look at that. That looks so good. Anything that you missed, squeeze it in there. As much coverage as you possibly can. All right. So our beef is prepped for the most part. Next, we need to get this in a sealed bag and then get it in our water bath, which this handy dandy machine has its own cutter. Zip, zap, zoop, zoobity-doo. So how does this work? We are going to seal off just the one side. And for a mess-free entry, we're gonna roll out the other end of our bag. And then we are going to try to stuff our brisket into the bag. Come on, buddy. Work with me. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Got him. Okay. This bag is a little bit too large, but no worry. That was by design. Yeah, so that's a lot of excess. I think I'm okay. Let's just cut it. Then, try to get as much air out as possible. Let our vacuum sealer do its thing. And for your own interest, you might want to do a double seal just in case. And hopefully got enough air out, because if you have too much air in this, not only does the sous vide not work 100% efficiency, but it will float. It might float. It'll probably float. But we could just put something to hold it under. All right, we got our double seal. Our brisket is ready to go in the water bath. Now, all we're gonna do, fill this up with water, and then we're gonna sous vide this at 155 Fahrenheit for at least minimum 24 hours. And you kind of don't want to go any longer than 36 hours. Simply put, the longer you put it in, the more tender it'll get. But there's a point of diminishing returns where the tenderness just becomes mushiness. So basically 24 hours to 36 hours will yield mostly the same results. But go at your own pace, find out what you like. Sometimes you like it mushy, which means more tender. Sometimes you want it less mushy, which is more of a steak-like texture. You'll be fine. I don't know when I'm gonna get back to this tomorrow. By 24, maybe 26, 28. I'm trying to live my life, you know? Not let the barbecue control my schedule, but let my schedule dictate the barbecue. Now, if you're brave, you can cut out a section for a nice seal. And if you're not that brave, you could take a bunch of aluminum foil and do that. Sure. What this helps with is, so when you walk away, go on with your life, go on with your day. You don't need to babysit the sous vide. This will keep our moisture in, so we don't have too much water evaporation going on. Where we could just get back to this sometime tomorrow. So I'll see you then. La 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 la. All right. So it is the next day. What do we set this at? 36 hours or 34? Got 10 and a half left. What is that? Minus 10, 30. 25 and a half hours. I'm looking for at least 24 hours, no more than 36. But that's it. And full disclosure, after checking on it, I did have to add a couple of hot. What are these? Trays, pans, things to weigh the brisket down so they're starting to float. In full disclosure, I also did throw in a rack of ribs in here for a little bit of behind the scenes magic. Where realistically, it's the exact same process with ribs. But if I'm really starved for content, I'll make the exact same video just with using ribs. Hot, 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 hot. Oh yeah, look at our big boy. Ooh, let's just get this on here. Out of the way. Back to our brisket, which this video you accidentally clicked on is all about. We are gonna need to cool this down really fast, which means we need to make an ice bath for this. Now, not only do we need to cool it down, throw it in the fridge, but getting our piece of meat cold is major key to achieving our smoky flavor. Now, most barbecue purists will say smoking this for 3 hours isn't enough for that smoky flavor. But to my understanding, most of the smoking and the flavor penetration happens within the first few hours. Smoke sticks better to cold than warm meat. Now, are we sacrificing a little bit of smoky flavor and a little bit of bark for perfectly cooked briskets, accessible briskets, good time management briskets? Yes, but it is worth it, in my opinion, to do it this way. So much easier, way less headache, way smaller room for error. So for our ice bath, we are gonna need some ice. Now, ideally, you could steal some ice from your fridge. You can go buy some ice, or if you got a lot of ice packs, that works too. Luckily, I got ice in my fridge. So all we need to do is fill our sink with ice and with water. And if you remember in grade school, mixing ice and salt gets our ice a little bit colder. You could try that too. This being a giant hunk of meat, it's gonna take out a lot of the coldness. So by doing this, just kind of gives us some insurance. So taking our cooked brisket, we're gonna toss it in our sink with our ice water. All right, had in our ice bath for a few minutes. It is now cool to the touch. It's cooled down really quickly. From here, you can slap it in the fridge, use it up into a week, probably 2. Don't hold me on that, I'm not responsible. But before I'm gonna put this away, I wanna show you guys how to make the best barbecue sauce ever. And why is it the best? Because we are going to be using, this looks so not appetizing. This liquid is going to be part of our barbecue sauce for a super concentrated, beefy, barbecue-y flavor. And so to do that, hopefully a lot of our fat has congealed. All right, so using a large-ish skillet such as this, might want to use a strainer to catch any large bits, but we're gonna cut just a little bit off here. Get our liquid out. That is just pure beefy goodness. Now you could seal this back up with your vacuum sealer or just put it away. And this is gonna go live in the fridge for a little bit. So this is a whole lot of liquid that we're gonna need to bring over to the stove and reduce it down a whole lot. But to make your own barbecue sauce is super simple. You should be doing it more often. All right, so now that we reduced our beefy goodness juice down to about cup and a half-ish, maybe 2 cups. I don't know, I can't count. To make our barbecue sauce, super simple. First, we're gonna need about 2 cups of ketchup. Next, we'll need 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Mixing. Next, a 1/4 cup of vinegar. Using white vinegar here. If you want apple cider vinegar, rice vinegar, try different. White vinegar works really nice. Then 2 tablespoons of honey. 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire, and 2 tablespoons of Dijon honey. Then lastly, we got 2 tablespoons of our dry rub that we saved from yesterday. Just to make sure everything mixes well together, emulsifies together very well to be a cohesive sauce. Let's whirl it together with our trusty immersion blender. So we're gonna leave this to simmer on low for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, ideally until you get the consistency that you like. If you like a runny consistency, obviously cut that a little bit shorter. If you want more of a thick barbecue sauce, sticky icky, simmer it a little bit longer till you get whatever you like. But ideally you're gonna wanna let this cool off, put into a bottle, container, and let it sit overnight in the fridge, for that's when the flavor really starts to come together, when it has more time to kind of just chill with itself. A little taste. Ooh. Ooh. That has so much depth to its flavor. Can't wait to see what it tastes like after it's had time to do its thing. So now everything's prepped. We got our sauce, we got our brisket way early in advance. Use this up within a week, probably 2. Stick to a week. I'm not qualified enough to give food safety advice here. But all this is done way early in advance. Now all we need is 3 hours to smoke this brisket whenever I want it. My schedule, my time. 'Cause I deserve some me time. And you deserve some me time. So with that said, we'll be back right after these messages. Are you tired of rising gas prices? Exorbitant grocery bills? Home ownership feeling out of reach? Well, suck it up. Hi, welcome back. So clearly I'm not in the studio kitchen anymore. It's been 5 days since we've sous vide our brisket, but I'm here at an Airbnb for a wholesome weekend with a group of young boys. That doesn't sound right. Anyways, let's get to smoking. So of course you're gonna need a vessel of some sort that will provide some heat and some smoke. If you're really practical and own a real smoker, that's ideal. But because I'm a cheap guy with no real money to have a real portable smoker, I have here this 18-inch Weber kettle that I've added a ginormous pot with some holes to allow for smoke and heat to get through. And this is what I use to smoke my meat. Pretty ghetto, but I had this pot laying around home. Works out great for me. Whatever you use, whether it be an electric, charcoal, or pellet smoker, we're gonna need to preheat your smoker to anywhere between 250 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And so for my setup, gonna be using a chimney charcoal starter with some charcoal. And we're gonna let that rock till it preheats. So, chimney has done its work. This is kind of dangerous. Let's get our charcoal in our smoker. Is this too much? Is this too little? I don't know. This is dangerous. Don't try this at home, people. Try this at a property that you do not own yourself. So again, we're gonna let this preheat. So about 250 to 300 degrees is where we wanna maintain it. If you got a charcoal grill, mess around with the vents to keep the temperature that you want. But if you got an easy pellet grill or electric smoker, it makes life a lot easier. All right, so our smoker's preheated. We're gonna add some of our smoking element. Got here some hickory wood hickory wood chunks, which goes really well with almost all things, but with beef, very nice flavor. And if you think you gotta soak these, doesn't make a difference. So we're just gonna throw a couple of the chunks in there, then we'll throw our brisket in. Now for our brisket. Oh yeah. Ooh, it's hot, 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 hot. And if you have anything else to smoke, you can throw that in too. So, we're gonna let this smoke for about 2 to 3 hours. Again, depending on how big your brisket is or whatever piece of meat you're using, 2 to 3 hours is enough time for it to smoke up. And ideally, we want the center of our meat to get to at least about 130 degrees Fahrenheit, where it's warmed through. We got our smoke flavor in, and it's heated back to a nice temperature to eat. So, we'll let this rock for 3 hours. We'll take a measurement, whatever. It's just barbecue. All right, it's been about 3 hours now. Oh yeah, these ribs that another video for. There's bonus content ribs here. Let's see these ribs here. Oh, Oh, pull off the bone. Mmm. Good? We're not here for this. We're not here for this. We'll get this out of the way. It's not the star of the show. At least not this video. But now for the big boy. Oh. Look at that jiggle. Yes. Yeah. Let's cut this through, see what it looks like. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Got a decent smoke ring. Been wild. Good piece of brisket. Take a bite. Mmm. Mmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mmm. Try it with some of our sauce. Mmm. Nice and beefy. Good amount of smoke flavor. Again, not the most smoke flavor you're gonna get, but hey, that was easy. Able to have fun all weekend. And that's it. And that's what's really great about this technique. That you can prep it at home well in advance, cottage, or to whatever party or event you want to feed people. It'll be ready when it's needed with just a few hours beforehand. It'll come out perfectly every single time. And even if you don't have a smoker, don't let this stop you, because you could use just your oven. While you won't be able to smoke for that extra smoky flavor, you could probably get away with adding a little bit of liquid smoke in the sous vide process. But it'll get the job done. I believe in you. So go out there and try to win the approval of your peers. They gotta like me now.